Hey, my name is John Santaferraro, and this is The Digital Analyst, where AI makes sense and digital dominance begins.
The Digital Analyst with John Santaferraro, powered by Insight Jam.
When I look at the speed at which AI is progressing, it feels like the future is here. However, AI is such a big technology shift that just the opposite is true. We've only scratched the surface of what can be done. 99% of the AI use cases are taking a new technology and using it to solve the problems that old technology was already solving. It's rare to see new paradigms, new business models, or new use cases emerging that are AI first or AI core. In other words, the best is yet to come. Think of the shifts that were made from horses to cars, or from cars to flight, or from computers to the internet. These were all massive shifts, not just in technology, but in culture and in life. In fact, each of these major technological shifts changed the world. And we are at the beginning of just such a shift. While many of the AI use cases are having impact, there is one area that has caught my attention because of the significant shifts that are already being made. That area is business intelligence. There are a handful of business intelligence vendors that began the transition to AI enablement all the way back in 2018. Those vendors are head and shoulders above the rest. And then there are the new AI-enabled BI vendors, or the agentic BI vendors, that seem to be surging ahead at an even faster pace than in some other software sectors. A few weeks ago, I got to have a conversation with my guest today, Rahul Pangam, the CEO and founder of RapidCanvas AI. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and join me on my Tuscan farm in the hills between Florence and Lucca for the Digital Analyst. A big digital welcome to Rahul Pangam. Rahul, it's so good to have you on the Digital Analyst.
Glad to be here, John. Excited to talk about AI.
I don't want to wait. I'm so excited about this. I want to jump right in and get to the point, and I want to find out. I know that you have a big vision for business intelligence, and I'm curious what you think it's going to look like in 3 years. Let's just say 3 years from now. I used to say 5. Nobody knows what anything's going to look like 5 years from now. But I'm guessing you started RapidCanvas AI because you had a clear picture of what you want to do. So give us your best. Give us your vision. What is it that you see coming down the road for business intelligence?
We can dive into the details as we go through this conversation, John. But the main thing when I think about business intelligence is I'm looking at the outcome, which is a business leader is trying to make data-driven decisions to inform business strategy, and everything sort of work backwards from there. So for this person to be able to make those decisions, you need some kind of storytelling from the data, right? This is where BI tool comes in, visualizations come in, right? So that's like the nearest step to that decision making. Now, in order to create those visualizations or that story, you need to orchestrate data. So you need data pipelines and data engineering work to get that there. And then before that is like you need to instrument the data and to make sure it shows up in places that can be accessed and extracted and put in this BI world. I think the biggest difference I see, um, which is the shift we have had since 2022, is the generative AI. Now, it does a few things across this spectrum of activities, from data instrumentation to data engineering to data visualization. It creates a layer of natural language. So it makes each of these layers accessible to a user and an audience that previously needed maybe technical skills to access these layers. So essentially, it takes away this hurdle of like, do you know the syntax? Do you know the coding language? Do you have an understanding of the administration of this database or what have you, right? So to me, that is the number one trend, which is the natural language interface and the accessibility. Um, the number two trend is AI agents, right? And again, it's a very loaded word, and we should spend time talking about what that means. But autonomously being able to go from end to end in this process with these self-directed agents, but I, as a user, get to set the outcomes and the goals and the guardrails, but the agents act relatively autonomously to get things done. Um, so I think those are the two sort of big trends. And now we can extrapolate how this, 3 years from now, what this looks like. If I'm a business leader, I can essentially look at my entire set of activities. So I'm trying to understand, if I'm a sales leader, what my sales look like over the last 3 quarters, right? Okay, I can just ask that question in a natural language and I get answers, and I can say, okay, show me the chart of how this looks, and it generates a chart and all those things, right? Right now I have to go to an analyst who then goes and pulls the data and so on and so forth. So one is, I'm able to access all this information at my fingertips with all the level of detail, uh, without asking anybody, right? It's all available. I think the second thing is, I'm able to predict and do scenario planning. Okay, so now that I know what 3 quarters look like, predict for me what the next quarter looks like. That's and what if scenario planning. So what if I increase my marketing costs? Like, what does that do to my next quarter's forecast, right? That's the second thing that you can do with information at your fingertips. And the third thing is, you can ask for context. Oh, I see that region A had a dip in sales in one of the quarters I asked about. What could be the potential reasons for that, right? And so you can get that information. So if I'm a sales leader, like 3 years from now, I should expect that all these things are just there, right? They have stable stakes, right? That's where I see the world being 3 years from now, probably even sooner.
I'm going to push you a little bit on this because I think I think what you're talking about, we're almost there. So, because I've seen the speed at which generative AI came on the scene and became useful, and agentic AI seems to be doing the same thing. And I do think there's going to be this evolution from task-based agents that we see today to persona-based agents. So you're going to have basically a data engineering AI agent and a data analyst AI agent and a business analyst AI agent and a sales leader AI agent. And they're all going to be working together somehow in a highly sophisticated and AI-enabled agent orchestration system that is vastly different from today we're seeing AI multi-agent platforms, but they're basically stringing together LLMs and stringing together points of reasoning, but they're not really doing the reasoning. In the future, they're going to be doing the reasoning. They're going to be doing the work of people. They're going to be collaborating with each other. And they're basically going to be able to read the mind of that sales leader to be able to know exactly what he wants, when he wants it, month after month, year after year. And, and then I think I don't even know what it's going to look like, but there's got to be new levels of communication that happen 3 years from now, where agents communicate with agents, and the human agent interaction has to be it has to be smoother. It can't be, I've got to go type something in. I've got to be able to speak it. I've got to be able to see it. Maybe there will be, a resurgence of augmented reality depending on the type of person that is using the data. There might be data that's available to a doctor while he's doing a surgery. There might be data that is available to a mechanic while he's working on a car. There might be, just all of these new models of human interaction, machine interaction, device interaction, application interaction, agent interaction that is going to be completely different 3 years from now. I don't know. What do you think? Am I too much of a dreamer? Because that's where I see it going.
Uh, I don't think that's too. I mean, some things are science fiction, but like what you mentioned, right? Anticipating what you need, John, right? Like, if last 6 times every quarter John came and asked for these 5 things, he may ask for 7 or 8 things, but these 5 things are common. Now, other VPs of sales like John in other companies also ask for these other 6 things, which, by the way, John never asked. So it should anticipate that, hey, it's that time of the quarter where you are looking for this information. And by the way, when you see this information, this is kind of the decisions you have made, and this is how they've unfolded. And by the way, here's what I understand: other people in your role at other companies who are your peers also seem to ask certain kinds of questions, 90% of which overlap with what you asked for, but there's this 10% which is different. Would you like to know about it? Right? None of this, I think, is far-fetched because that data exists today. The information exists today. It's like, how do you access it? How do you stitch it together? How do you make it meaningful? How do you derive intelligence is the question. That's why what you're saying doesn't seem like far-fetched. It's just a matter of making it usable, synthesizing it, making it intelligent. All the baseline stuff today is already digitized and the information exists.
Unlock better leads through Solutions Review events.
Welcome to Data Demo Day. Expert Roundtable, Solution Spotlight featuring Monte Carlo, Cohesity, Denodo, Cloudflare, High Gear, Broadcom, NextThings.
Boost your brand with a webinar that shares comprehensive use cases, real-time product demos, and an interactive Q&A. All broadcast live to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Zoom from our Boston studio, or even on location. Fill your sales funnel with high-quality targeted leads. And contact us today by visiting solutionsreview.com/virtual events.
You talked about these trends that are emerging right now, or are exploding. I don't know if we could talk about them as emerging. They're exploding right now. How do you see the evolution of those trends in order to reach that 3-year vision? I'll give you an example. I remember back in the mid 2010s, around 2015. There were a couple of trends that were emerging back then. One was the combination of BI platforms with what I would call a light version of data engineering. People realize that the data analyst wants to do some data engineering. They don't want to have to rely on another department or another tool to get that job done. So that began around 2015. And then there was also, back around 2018, the use of machine learning in business intelligence platforms. And that's when we started to hear about augmented intelligence, automated intelligence, next best question, natural language interfaces, natural language explanations of the data that was coming back. So all those things have been around for a long time. And in the past few years, Gen AI seems to have brought all that together. I'm not sure what's going to happen with agentic and how that's all going to come together. How do you see these trends evolving to get to that 3-year vision and make it possible?
I think it's important for the audience to understand that AI has been around with us for a while, and so has BI, right? The company SAS, that helped statisticians with tools, right, to do machine learning and statistical analysis, has been around since 1976, right? And that's that is AI in my mind, right? It's an early form of AI, and only specialists could do things, and so that's been around with us. Microsoft Excel, which is the most fundamental BI tool, has been around since the 80s, right? So none of this is new stuff, right? So we've had these concepts and these functions and capabilities in some way, shape, or form for a while. The traditional AI is more on machine learning, modeling, forecasting, predictive analytics, and that's been around for a long time. I think the quantum leap we have made in the last couple of years is generative AI, right? Can you take sort of natural language and do a whole bunch of tasks with it, whether it's research, whether it's generating code, whether it is kind of creating a draft, whether it is creating a proposal? I think that's the sort of quantum leap, and that one leap improves all the other areas that we've worked with in the data world, whether it is data acquisition, data storage, data engineering, or machine learning or data visualization, right? And I'll give you an example, right? So let's say, and this is sort of one of the areas we deal with, and we have a few customers that do this end-to-end process. I am trying to understand. I'm an automotive afterparts manufacturer. I'm trying to understand what my sales looks like in the last few quarters. I'm trying to predict how I should plan for the next year because I have anywhere from 3 week to 6 month lead time for different parts that I need to manufacture my finished product. How should I stack up my inventory, that entire process, and how much should I order from my suppliers, right? So now you have this whole process. Um, it isn't like somebody was writing this on paper and pen and eventually they just moved to AI, right? They have been evolving over time on how they do this. And so one of the first things someone would have done was like use a system of record, like an ERP, for example, to make sure you're digitizing this information, capturing all the right things. And then this particular company would have used Excel to kind of take basic data from the ERP and do some bit of like regression models or some kind of machine learning techniques. Very, very simplistic to come up with some kind of recommendations. I wouldn't say that they weren't able to forecast. I would say the error in forecast is quite large, and the ability to associate logic and insights that fundamentally came from the human who was operating these systems. Now I'm looking at present day, right? I'm not even looking at the sort of future state, right? Even in the present day, there are underlying traditional building blocks that power this entire end-to-end setup. There is an ERP. We have traditional machine learning models which let you do forecasting and scenario planning and all of that. And now how we have orchestrated this is you have this interface which is basically a visual canvas and a natural language interface, right? So you can program this entire workflow to say uh, 80% of my data exists in ERP, 15% of my data exists in Excel spreadsheets, and 5% of my data exists in some PDF formats, right? So now here are the locations. Here is the access, whether it's login, passwords, what have you. Here is the folder. Here's the frequency at which this data appears. Can we get all this data? Number one, right? Second is the entire data engineering process, which is okay, now that I have this information, um, I am trying to take this information and feed it into my forecasting model. So that information needs to be transformed, cleaned, prepped to make it high fidelity enough for the models to give me meaningful outcomes. So there, again, you can just converse in natural language. Okay, I'm trying to combine these four files, figure out what the index is, figure out what columns need to be dropped, uh, the statistical relevance and which columns matter, which don't. All of that you can literally converse. And in the back end, the SQL statements, the Python code, all of that can be generated very easily. And then the last bit is like, how do you communicate with the machine learning models? Again, today we build these machine learning models using traditional techniques, but I think there will be a future where you can use natural language. But once you have these models, you can do the what if analysis saying, hey, now that I have all this data orchestrated, feed it to the model, forecast for me next quarter. Okay, great. What if there is a lead time issue because of supply chain disruptions and tariffs and so on and so forth? Give me a scenario B and it will do it, right? So this is present day. I'm not even talking about the future, right? This is present day. I think the underlying blocks today, we still have to use traditional techniques to make sure they're available to this sort of natural language interface. I think as time goes by, the agentic way of doing things will make sure those blocks come together much more seamlessly. That's like 2 or 3 years away. I think it's still quite, I would say, clunky how these come together. You still have to involve manual effort to put these together. But 3 years from now, you don't have to, right? You can literally state, "Oh, build me a model, um, build me this pipeline," and it the underlying part of like figuring out which columns need to be dropped and all of that, that can be done by the agent, right? So we are to your point, we're already kind of there, and we can that near term future 2 3 years we can see kind of what that looks like at a very minimal state, right? I'm not even talking about ambitious state. The ambitious state can be even quite crazier, but I think just the leap that we have taken in the last 2 years give us a very good view into where we'd land realistically.
Yeah, I guess I kind of want to hear about the ambitious too. I mean, I think, and in fact, maybe we can dig down into more details and more specifics. For example, I mean, what do you think needs to be designed into a future-looking BI platform so that AI functions more as a strategic thought partner than just a tool? A strategic partner, right? And how do you
Yeah.
design the human to AI interface in the future for use case scenarios that maybe are more interactive and more mobile and more transparent? They're just it's life, and the AI is there. How do you design the new BI platform to connect seamlessly to devices, applications, process automation platforms? I mean, we're really switching the paradigm. Can you get down into some of the details of what you think needs to be done from a design perspective?
Yeah. So first, I'll answer your first question, right? Like, okay, beyond the realistic, what is the ambitious scenario, right? The ambitious scenario is I have product line X, okay? I want to expand into product line Y. Uh, Knowing everything you know about how my end-to-end setup works for X and knowing everything you know about the competitive landscape, can we design for for my company a situation where I actually thrive in this competitive landscape, given my unique advantages and the way I have built my business? And once you design that, then okay, can you give me an implementation plan of how to build this tactically, right? To me, that is the ambitious scenario, is where you're brainstorming with an agent like, hey, should I expand into product B or should I expand into product C? And if it's
Yeah,
product B, give me a full view of how that competitive landscape is stacked up today, how that changes if I enter the market, how that changes with the evolution of the environment, whether it's technical trends or geopolitical trends. Make some forecast, play that out to me, and then once I like what I see, okay, I do want to enter the market for product C, not B. Then it's like, okay, help me implement this. So I have like
yeah,
a realistically high probability of success in this business line, right? To
yeah,
me, that's like the ambitious scenario where like it is acting, AI is acting, AI agents are acting like a thought partner with you and doing some of this scenario planning around a business level, not the tactical implementation level, right? That and as for me as a business owner, I see the same. That would be invaluable because I can wake up in the middle of the night, like 10 p.m., and I can start brainstorming, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
there's no anytime access and full access.
I maybe that's not so ambitious because I mean you can use generative AI in that mode today to be able to evaluate a business plan, to be able to provide a business plan, to have it shift the strategy slightly, to give it a history, what has been done in the past, and have based on that build a plan that is similar or a plan that leverages the things that work there. I mean, all of that is possible today. I wonder if there's even immediate opportunity to connect the business intelligence piece of it where the data lies and the insight to the generative AI in a more open in a more open fashion. So you're drawing from, a natural language interface that pulls the data in, natural language that uses the Gen AI. Because I use I use generative AI in the way that you described. I use it today like that.
It's almost like it's good to have, right? It sort of validates my thesis if I have a strong one. It sort of gives me some ideas, but the weight of the responsibility of that decision lies on me. I think we still consider it to be, it's an assistant. It's okay. It has its own shortcomings and hallucinations and all of that. So I'm not going to completely trust it to say whatever decision you give me, I'm going to just run with it, right? I think there's a little bit of a reliability issue. And this is why we went from like one shot prompts to like reasoning models, and the reasoning models are getting better because the trust in that analysis and decision, I think there's still a gap, right? So there is that gap that will keep reducing. Um, uh, those insights and those decisions will become more and more reliable, right? And that part has to be overcome. right?
Yeah.
In some sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I think what you're saying is that right now, some of that is possible. By the way, this idea of a thought partner is not mine. Jeff Woods wrote a book called The AI Leader, and he outlines that concept really well, just to get people to shift from using generative AI just to generate simple things to actually being more strategic with it and having it be a thought partner, a brainstorming partner, things like that. But it sounds to me like the opportunity moving forward is to improve the accuracy of those outputs, not necessarily to get it. So today, a lot of human interaction. Tomorrow, less human interaction required. Is that what you're suggesting?
that's accurate, right? And I'll give you maybe more like a real life example, right? Like a radiologist that looks at X-rays, right? Now, how has this person, how how does the radiologist diagnose the situation? He looks at the X-ray. He's probably read a lot of books, seen a lot of images of past cases, and is able to diagnose. Oh, when I see this kind of pattern of visual pattern, it means something, right? Now, today we are trying to say, hey, can I automate most of the work that this radiologist does? But if you take it one step further, saying, hey, in a lifetime of learning as a human, radiologist can, I don't know, look at 10,000 images, and that shapes their diagnosis, right? Now, if every single image with every single diagnosis in the world is fed to an agent, that agent has seen maybe like, I don't know, 100 million, right? Diagnosis and images, and has that correlation. So just in a sense of like interpreting images and correlating that to diagnosis, and the frequency of those diagnoses that correlate with that image, I think it that AI agent will have a vastly more superior access to knowledge base, interpretation. So I think that's what to me is the ambitious part, right? Once we start building trust in, oh, like this analysis that came back from this agent, I and of course a human radiologist will validate that. But that analysis, maybe this person would have never seen a case like this in their lifetime and would not have been able to make it accurately. But once they get the entire history of why the agent did the analysis it did, what kind of images it used as a reference to come up with that analysis, like that is invaluable. Now, this radiologist is doing a very different job, right? He's trying to look at an agent interpretation and make sure that it is like perfect from a human standpoint, is not trying to look at rote memorizing how to interpret things or like learn from things, right? That is sort of offloaded. So it makes both better, the radiologist better, because their wisdom and their reach is infinite in some sense. And the agent is doing what is hard to do as a human, the scale and the ability to crunch these numbers in like very very fast in seconds and minutes would have been impossible for a human to do, right?
Yeah.
So it makes both systems better, and the interplay of these and how they rely on the other and what they trust and don't trust is the key, right, as we look at the future.
Want more Insight Jam? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for shorts, panels, podcasts, and more. In your Shorts feed, enjoy a daily dose of best practices from tech experts and leading solution providers, while long-form panel discussions and keynotes, recorded live every quarter, go deep on important industry topics. And don't miss our collection of regular podcasts, keeping you informed on the latest trends. We're hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so subscribe to be notified of our next upload. Now, let's get back to the show.
Some more details. What about the dashboard, for example? I mean, do you think we're still going to have dashboards 3 years from now? And what do you need to design into the human to AI interface to modernize it? I mean, I can't imagine with all that AI capability that the BI tool is going to look exactly like it looks today. What needs to change?
I think the easiest way to think about it is like there is a template based world, and then there is a you can generate anything you want in real time world. And in a template based world, you have to pre-configure templates with predefined code to do certain things, right? So historic BI tools, hey, you can pick this to be on the x-axis and you can pick that to be on the y-axis. So by the nature of that definition, templates are very limiting. They are very empowering in the sense you don't need to know how to code. The template has the underlying code and it's one click and you can do things. But also very limiting in the sense like it can only do 100, 200, 300 things. So today we have this concept of a dashboard that is connected to the template world, which is okay, I will have 16 tabs and each tab will have this and there'll be a drill down and the drill down will take me to another one. What you want things to be is like a natural flow, right? Which is where the conversational interface comes in. Hey, like tell me the trends from the last 2 months. Okay, here are the trends. Okay, why am I seeing trend deviate in account one versus account two when they've always been very tightly correlated? It'll give you an answer. Okay, I get this answer, but I want you to give me a chart, and that chart should show this trend week over week with like moving averages, and it generates a chart. Now you can just ask, like, hey, in this chart, I'm trying to drill down into this one product line instead of looking at all 20 in aggregate. Can you do that? So it's more of a conversational flow, and you might just discard that entire conversation thread after it's done, but you don't have to really know that there is a defined layout of a dashboard and somebody else set it up for me and I can drill down and all of that, but it's like all kind of predefined. I think it liberates you from pre-configurations and predefined dashboards to more like in the flow. You can generate a chart, you can get an answer, you can generate a table, you can add synthetic data, you can do what if analysis, and you can just keep flowing through this. Um, and you create an entire thread. And if you like, you can save things from the thread that are frequently used and save it onto probably what would be the like of a dashboard, right?
Yeah.
Or the AI saves it for you, saying, hey, you asked this like 15 times. I'm just going to make a tab for you that save things that you asked 15 times, right? But it's more of a flow and it's more of a natural back and forth than trying to pre-configure things and then trying to remember, okay, which is what is where.
Yeah, but see, I still think that the way that everything you just described is really nice. Most of it I think you can do today, but I think there's got to be more. I mean, I think dashboards will exist, but I think they have to morph into something that is more like a cockpit. Because if I'm an executive, I've got to fly a plane, and there's some things that I need to do, and I got to get when it's time to take off. I got to be in control. But there's got to be some things even there that are just buttons I can push to go. And then at some point when the plane is flying, I want to be able, I mean, I still have to act. I still have to have human interaction. I have to be there in my pilot seat, but I want to go to autopilot on 80% of the things that need to continue to happen. And that means that if it's going to be a cockpit, then that information, it's not enough to just do information and ask questions and dialogue with data and do different kinds of analytics. That dashboard, that cockpit has to be connected to workflows and applications and machines and devices and augmented reality and physical human work as it's being done in the field. So I think that in the next 3 years, we've got to figure out how to shift to make active use of a business intelligence platform. It can't stay informational.
And you'll see this term thrown around quite a bit nowadays, like the MCP, Model Context Protocol, right? This is, to your point, like the connective tissue of how do you like seamlessly access anything in order to inform these decisions, and how do you seamlessly act upon that and sort of drive downstream kind of actions, right? Or implications of your decision in the organization, right? Because you're right, like still data exists in these silos of like SaaS applications and databases and Excel files and PDFs. And by the way, a lot of that information is unstructured, right? Which is again where generative AI makes a huge difference. It's able to take unstructured data and get that to be for the models, it's structured, right? So it's able to make it's able to put it in context, it's able to make sense out of it, right? In the grand scheme of things, right? Read from emails, read from Slack threads, and pull the right information from there, right? So to your point, there are two elements there, right? How do you connect into the existing ecosystem without worrying about API connectors and all of that? And how do you make sense of data that was not in structured form, or information that's not in structured form, right? So those two elements have to go hand in hand with this conversational nature, right? This is the other interesting part about the whole generative AI, RAG frameworks, vector databases, like the infrastructural part of it. It makes it possible to aggregate information. It makes it possible to take unstructured information and make it into structured data. And so, to your point, it enables you to have a very broad, uh, uh, like, an almost, um, you know, plane of action, right? Of where you can access information and where you can make decisions. And so that takes you from, oh, I'm just using this to converse with my data, to actually this can go all the way down and translate into accessing all the telemetry and then controlling all the actions, right? That part is also a sort of big shift, right? Because of generative AI. And the third part, which we talked about a little bit, is a strategic part, right? How do I design my next product line, and the how do I implement the business process for that next product line? Again, this is the more strategic AI agent thought partner that you can talk to and create that view. And then, to your point, it's a cockpit view. I'm going to deploy strategy A for product line B. I'm going to get constant proactive feeds from the agent saying, "Hey, I think last week we didn't quite track what I thought we should be tracking. Here are some ideas of what could be done," right? And at that point, there is a level of proactivity and sort of predictability that would be hard with today's setup, right? Because you co-design this business strategy for a new product line uh, with the agent. You're able to converse with what's going on with another agent. You're able to get these proactive inputs through that agent. And the third is you're able to action upon these because you have generative AI that can access all your existing frameworks and systems of records and systems of communication. And they're also able to push decisions and information, right, to make those decisions to those systems.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in essence, but there's a lot of moving pieces here, right? I think the fundamental thing is, again, going back to trust. It's one thing getting all this as a concept and in theory, and will you actually trust it to push the right buttons uh, and make the right decisions? I think that trust building will happen in the next 2-3 years.
I mean, somehow they got to the point where everybody on board, as well as the pilots in the cockpit, trust autopilot on an airplane. It's gotta be possible.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, right? Because there's a threshold at some point, like I mentioned with the radiologist, like the decisions are going to be much superior because of the access to information and the learning that has happened. And once that becomes a norm, then you shift to saying, okay, I'm going to trust this system as long as I'm in the loop as a human. I'm going to trust this system to make the judgment, and I'm going to pick from the options put in front of me. Like, if I go with option one, here are my pros, here are my cons. If I go with option two, here are my pros, here are my cons. And then I can tell the agent, okay, what are the things I need to know every day once I've chosen an option, so that I'm in the loop in what's going on, and I can intervene if need be. Right. That's sort
Yeah.
of where we're headed.
Yeah, I think there's gotta be a major shift in the way business intelligence companies think, because the old paradigms they're dead. They're gone. They're not gonna work going forward. I mean, the BI platform, and maybe it's not even called BI at some point in the future, but it's gotta be the curator and the delivery mechanism for insight, and even some orchestration of insight that happens, through these agent capabilities. It's got to expand beyond where it is to fully realize, I think, the potential of what it can be. And it can't stay the old paradigm of BI has to die.
That part I agree with you, right? And I think we have some sort of parallel. So, if I look at the mobile phone pre 2008, post 2008, right? Everybody was trying to make the keyboard phone smarter, right? Can I now read my email on the phone? Can I build these specific apps for the phone? And, that era, as what used to be a smartphone then is no longer a smartphone, right? And, the dominant players in that world, like Nokia and BlackBerry, none of those names exist today, right? Once you switch to a touch only iPhone, Android ecosystem, the way you think about apps, the way you think about user interface, the way you think about what can be enabled with like gyroscopes and location information and visual face recognition, it just changes the whole paradigm of what a phone means.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And to me today, what we are thinking about BI tools is like the BlackBerry before 2008.
yeah, yeah.
It's not
It's
that
got
they
it.
can, yeah, it's not that they can add a sliding screen and the screen becomes big and that can evolve. It's fundamentally going to be different,
Yeah,
right? And
it's
we're
got to
only starting
change.
to go that direction.
Hey, listen, for our listeners, this whole AI thing is moving faster than anybody can possibly keep up with. And in a sense, you're asking people to invest in AI for BI. Um, why? Just in a few words, really, why for our listeners, why should they invest in AI for BI when they have 27 other possibilities and other places where they could be using AI? And what are a couple of steps that they can take now to be able to move forward with that?
Yeah, so I think the term BI in this new world has to be redefined, right? BI was the last step in some sense of like visualizing data, creating a story out of it to help you make decisions. And so BI meant data visualization platforms. But in order to power that platform, you need to orchestrate the data, which is data engineering. In order to do that, you need to have a system of record to collect that data and all of that. I think that entire world of like what needs to be done in order to visualize the data, that system will just collapse, right? And that end user who actually cares about the decision making doesn't need a whole set of folks at the scale that they have today, right? The data analyst and the business analyst and the data engineers and database architects and so on and so forth to enable this end state, right? That BI will go all the way from right to left and will be able to do that through the agentic framework, right? So that is a fundamental shift in the kind of talent you need to hire, the amount like you need to invest in different kinds of systems. And if anything, AI makes sure that even with fewer people, you can make this happen, right? And this is why I think businesses need to really consider this, given the alternative of the cost and the time and the people that you need to invest to make this happen is out of reach, honestly, for most businesses, right? And so
Yeah.
they need to consider this very seriously. And again, I think this notion of data driven decisions is not new, but I think finally we can get to a reality where it is accessible, right? And you don't have to jump through 10,000 hoops to make that possible. And so if you're a business that cares about data driven decisions, and if you don't want to invest a tens of millions of dollars setting up this entire end to end flow, AI makes it easy for you, right? It makes it fast, it makes it cheap, it makes it easy. Why not? Right? My question is not why, it's like, why not?
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, Rahul, thank you so much for joining the Digital Analyst. It's been a great discussion. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Oh, thank you, John. And always love talking to you. I think your history and experience working with in the data field, I think it prompts a lot of interesting questions and always an interesting conversation.
Awesome. Let's stay in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on The Digital Analyst. If you enjoyed what you heard today, do me a favor, write down below, like and subscribe. If you want more content like this, go to insightjam.com or go to the insightjam.com YouTube channel where there's hundreds of other videos, great content. You can join more than 800,000 other subscribers there. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. You can check out ferraroconsulting.com, but let's start a conversation. Let's talk more. To connect with Rahul, you can connect with him on LinkedIn or go to rapidcanvas.ai. I'm sure he would love to speak with you more. It's a great and exciting topic. We'll see you in a couple of weeks right here on The Digital Analyst.
Powered by Insight Jam.